everyone, to the ComedySportz Podcast, starring your host, Christine Rollo Capriolo, and today's special guest, just another brick in the Berlin Wall, Brian Kazoo Kapell.
Hey, listeners, welcome to another wonderful edition of the ComedySportz Podcast. I'm Christine Rollo Capriolo, your happy and excited host today because I have a special guest all the way from Germany. Everybody give a warm welcome to Mr. Brian Kapell. Hey, Brian.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. This is so wonderful. My listeners don't know this, but usually when I do phone interviews, I don't get to see the person, but we're on a Zoom call right now and I get to see you. And it's so nice to have a face-to-face right now.
Nice. That's a great thing to see eye to eye.
Yes.
Nice. Thanks for having me, really.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm super excited to talk to you. I'd like to just start like how I always start and wondering, where are you from? Where were you born and raised?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I was born there. I went to college in Madison. I went to Madison West High School, which was the same school as a lot of original players went to between that. And then I went to UW-Madison and stayed there until I moved out to start ComedySportz Washington, D.C.
Okay. What did you...
So that was my way out.
What did you study when you went to UW-Madison?
I studied theater. I was an acting specialist, they called it. And at the same time, I was getting another BA in communicative disorders.
Communicative disorders.
Yes, that's right, disorders. So speech therapy, hearing disorders, it led me to a very interesting combo career as well. So, yeah, so I majored in both.
Okay.
Was always busy, always in a show and always studying. I loved it. I had a great time at UW. Yeah.
Well, now you said before we get to how you left and started ComedySportz in D.C., how did you hear about ComedySportz in the first place in Madison?
Ooh, so 1985. So this is a really wonderful thing to come into my life, really. In February of 85, my father committed suicide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it was horrible, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
So I was really having a tough time. And then in May of that year, I was part of the UW theater department. Dick Chudnow comes on up from Milwaukee and puts a little sign up on the call board saying, announcing that he'd like to start this improvisation group and begin. And so, but we started, that was it. We met every weekend for 8 weeks into June and July. And then at the end of July of that year, then we started performing.
Who's we? Who were the first people?
The first people, that would have been Jeff Kramer, Mike Rock, the guy Jay Indick, Teresa, can't remember her last name, Lorraine Barr, David Miller, Rick Wilgrubs, Leslie Hollander, who else was in that? Jennifer Rupp, of course.
Of course.
Patrick Walsh. And these people, I can't remember any others offhand, but I'm sure they'll pop into my memory. And that was it. And we were just blown away. It was like the most creative, fun that I think we'd ever experienced. And we'd been, kids, you can rehearse a show, but this was something else. And Dick was such a playful, wonderful, fun guy to learn from.
Yeah.
And that was it. So then Milwaukee and Madison started, we would travel we'd go down to Milwaukee and Milwaukee would come up to Madison and we'd show each other new games every weekend. And, it just was a blast. And it really saved my life because I really needed I needed that. I needed a father figure. I'll admit, Dick was. I'm a small guy, small Jewish guy, and he was the small little wiry Jewish guy. But he just made us feel great. And Andy Wallman, of course. Wicky Wacky Wallman was in that first corps as well. Oh,
did you know?
Wonderful days.
Did you know a lot of those people already in school with you in theater, or did you meet all these new people?
No. We were all together. We were all. I knew everyone. I knew everybody. Yeah. We were all in the UW theater department, pretty much. Some of us were undergraduate. I was an undergrad, and then there were people like Kramer, and who was a graduate student. Okay. And so that was our combo.
Right, right. Now, when you were going, you said you would go to Milwaukee. Milwaukee would go to Madison. Did you feel there were any differences already between the two troops?
They could drink more than we could.
I probably
they
still
were
could.
good at that. It was such a great camaraderie and competition.
Yeah.
Because we would spend the week kind of making up new game, and then we were just, I can't wait to show it to these guys, and they couldn't wait to show us a game. And we would do remotes together. We were just starting to do, those kinds of group shows, and we would mix it up. And they were such talented, funny people. Yeah. And we were too. Sure. We were incredibly funny. At least we thought we were funny. But it was such a brave new world because we just cranked out this idea that we went, and that back then it was called theater sports, right, with a Z at the end. Yeah. It was always with a Z at the end. And we were compelled to figure out a way to wind it up and make it into this hyper competitive performance format. Because theater sports, the way we had first got it, it wasn't quite enough for us. Okay. We were hungry to ramp up the whole competition. Mm-hmm. And at least, for the audience, to give it that audience feel. So we changed the scoring system. We created all these new kinds of games, head-to-head games, step-out games. And when it came time for us to kind of, I guess this is how Dick told us this, is like, well, theater sports is pretty fit us. We can't, we're not, they said, we're not really doing a theater sports show anymore, and we're not. Yeah. So ComedySportz, the name ComedySportz came out of it. Okay. I still have my theater sports jersey. You do? The original one from 35 years ago. Yeah, I still have it. And oh yeah. And then when we changed over to ComedySportz, then we realized we were actually onto something special, because we actually upset the Canadians. And we were like, I think we got something that's really connecting. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that you guys were making up games. Milwaukee was making up games. Can you remember some of the games you made up?
Well, the first games were like, the very first round of games were, what are you doing? Right. And changing emotions. Uh-huh. I think I remember, because Milwaukee had started it in 1984, and they had already come up with a pretty cool little set of games. I do remember one incredible one-upmanship they did. They just killed us. So I can't remember the game we came up with, but this was at the Pizza Hut. Okay. Place in the back room there, and we came up with a great scene game. We thought, this is it. This is so the greatest scene game. I can't even remember what it was anymore, because Milwaukee was just sitting there just with this grin on their face. And we were like, we just destroyed you. Yeah. What are you going to do? What are you going to show? And they came up and did Emotional Symphony. Okay. The simplest gimmick game ever. Right. And it was so funny, so unbelievably funny that we were just, they just wasted us with the simplest game. I think it was Brian Green. I think Dick came up. As far as other games, when we took like freeze tag. I remember when we took freeze tag, for example, great foundational game, but we said, well, let's turn this into a scene game. Okay. And then then Parallel Universe came out of that.
Oh, okay.
How do we take Dr. Know-It-All and turn it into and expand on it? How do we take a replay game and change a part of it? And now we have Countdown, right? Because of that. Because it's like, how can we play with an element of a replay, sure, but give it a new little twist? Like replay is a good example. Like there was emotional replay. Then there was a style replay. Right. Then there was musical replay. Right. Then, all of these came out of, had to come one after the other in terms of finding a voice. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite game back then?
No, I don't think so. I think we were so gung-ho to play anything. I mean, we played such lemons too. We played games that was like, there is no chance a team should play that now.
Like what? I mean,
taking the hat, like you had to distract, everyone wore a hat, and you tried to distract them enough so that you could grab the hat off their head. I mean, we tried. We were out there to try things and throw them away because there's something much better that we want to play. And it was very immediate. We knew what you got an audience feedback immediately. Yeah. That's the greatest thing about the forum. Sure. And you knew immediately, does this have legs, or are we just trying to beat it up until we should put this one away? Right. Some of them, Spolin, we took the book. We took Spolin's book, Improvisation for the Theater. We just rummaged through it every week. We were going through it going, can this be a rule for a performance game? Okay. Can this be a rule? Could that be a rule? Yeah. And that's kind of how we broke through with the inventions that we came up with.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I love it. That's awesome.
I mean, I wasn't that funny. I don't think I was that funny. No, I wasn't that funny, but I was a good technician of the form. Mm-hmm. I always felt that I'm not like Andy Wallman or, some players, they're just so funny naturally. But me, I always I could tell what was needed. We could add a new character. We needed to swipe and change locations. I knew how to build a story well, because we were all theater people. Mm-hmm. So we had that kind of background, that kind of training. So it worked.
So you really took to improv then?
I totally did. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm still doing it. Right. That's what I'm doing in Berlin. I still run shows 35 years later. I can't get these games out of my system. I just can't.
Well, so how long were you in Madison? You started in 85. How long did you stay before you went to Washington, D.C.?
I think I moved in 87. At the very end of 1987, I moved. Patrick Walsh had moved out to Washington, D.C. with his wife and wanted to start a group. Okay. And Patrick and we weren't really friends. We weren't really close friends, but we both knew the show, and I needed a change. And I liked the artistic side. I like to train people in the show, and he had a good wicked business mind. So I moved out to DC, and then in January of 88, we started doing shows in DC. In fact, I think I arrived into DC and we had our first show that night.
Oh,
I think that was right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's true. And then we started the ComedySportz DC, and they're still playing. Thank God. Yeah. And that was wonderful. And I actually and we trained a lot of great people out of the DC team.
Where were you playing there? Like you went from Madison, where you were at a Pizza Hut. Where was DC's space?
In DC, for quite a while, we were just going to different bars.
Oh, okay.
And that was so nerve-wracking and difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was living in Old Town Alexandria, which is, if you look at DC as a diamond, this is the lowest tip of the diamond there is Alexandria, in Old Town Alexandria, this fabulous, beautiful town. And I walked into the Terlitsky's Deli. This is a Jewish deli right there on King Street, 1324 King Street. And I walked in and I saw they had a back room, brick, and they had this upstairs bar. Yeah. And so that was in January. And within 3 months, I had opened the Laughing Lizard Lounge.
The Laughing Lizard Lounge.
That's epic stuff here. And so we opened a club, my own comedy club, and I had 2 stages, one for music and one for comedy. And we started shows there. We had our own club.
Yeah.
So we could rehearse there, we could perform there, we could lock the doors at the end of the night and just keep going there. These were wonderful. It didn't last long for me. By end of 1990, my mom then went terminally ill.
Oh.
And I went back to Madison to take care of her until she died.
Okay.
So coming back to Madison, playing for Madison again. Actually, I remember playing ComedySportz again while my mom was dying, and feeling tremendous support from my friends and how much laughter kept me going.
Right.
But it was so it's always been wrapped up in my life to keep me going.
Well, it's a common thread when I talk to anybody who has performed with ComedySportz that it's not a job, it's not a hobby, it's really a family and a support system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, there were we could lean on each other. Mm-hmm. It wasn't always. It's not like. I mean, it's still not for me. That these are a lot of my best friends. It's like I really need to call someone and talk to them. No, not really. But I always could show up and leave the cares behind and let's focus our heads and make the people laugh.
Sure.
And it always worked. We battle through it. We confront it. We confront our monsters with the comedy. It's it really helped. Yeah, it still does.
Now, is that part of your philosophy? Like you said, you've taught this too, right? You've taught a lot of workshops.
Oh my God. I mean, of course, over how many years, I've trained so many players, of course.
Yeah.
The team that I run now, it's 25 people. They're from all over the world here in Berlin. And oh my God, all the workshops, all the school, the kids that can play these games. Yeah. Here, a really, really wonderful part of my life after my mom had died was then I started doing theater of the deaf. So I started working with deaf actors because I was after my mom had died, I just thought I can't do comedy anymore. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to combine my undergraduate degree, my communicative disorders, and my theater.
Right.
And I went into theater of the deaf. But within a year, I had started a deaf ComedySportz team.
What?
And they were all deaf,
Wow.
And they played the games with such passion and clarity. I mean, you can imagine.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Them playing, what are you doing? Or them playing 3 things.
Right.
These are the most beautiful, vivid performances. The physicality, the physical life. Oh, just so gorgeous.
That's amazing.
So I've taught a lot of people the games. Yeah.
And what do you think anyone can learn it? Do you think anyone can do improv?
Oh yes, I'm totally convinced. Anybody can learn these games if they're willing to look foolish.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to be willing to be a clown and to laugh at yourself.
Sure.
And that's sometimes why we have difficulties with the Germans, German players, because they're not, the German culture, they're not so used to laughing at themselves.
Oh.
They're quite rigid about being fools. But once they get across that line, they're everyone's fine. Now, not everybody should get in front of an audience and perform it.
Okay.
That's, I think, true. I think you need to have a certain, a certain vibe about your performance level in order to get, if I'm going to ask myself, okay, is this person who I'm training, can they get in front of an audience and play?
Yeah.
And make audiences laugh? That's another level. But everybody can learn the games and play them. Yes. I totally agree with that.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. So you said you went back to Madison, and how long were you in Madison then?
Well, that was 90, 91. Mm-hmm. Not long. Really, my mother's illness was pretty short until she died.
Okay.
Quick, and then I had to pack up my life there and figure out what was going to happen next. So by the fall of 91, I was back. I left again.
And where'd you go?
I moved after there, I went to Rochester, New York. There was the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, was there, kind of University of the Deaf.
Okay.
And part of the Rochester Institute of Technology. And that's where I entered the Deaf Institute and started learning sign language and working in the theater department. Wow. And by then, and then a year after that, I started getting hired for theaters of the deaf. Okay. And I did that for many years. I wasn't playing ComedySportz for those few years, not while I worked in Cleveland, Ohio. This was a good city for the deaf theater for some reason, and was there. And in Chester, Connecticut, where they had the National Theater of the Deaf. I got to work with them. I actually wasn't a company member, but I got to work with them a lot. Then there's just a few professional theaters of the deaf, and Cleveland was one of them.
My brain keeps going back to these ComedySportz shows that you did with deaf performers. And I'm trying to envision this as an audience member. So if I don't speak sign language and I went to see that show, no?
We could do some interpreting. We could have interpreters saying what they're signing, but really, these were for deaf audiences.
Oh, okay.
I got to admit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Although I did take a group up, the deaf team, I did take them up to Montreal for the Just for Laughs festival. Okay. There was an improv wing just starting up of the Just for Laughs festival, and we blew everyone away.
I bet.
This deaf improv team playing the games. Yeah.
Now there has to be a game. Did you guys create a game that works for deaf performers versus speaking?
Well, there are certain games that don't work for sure.
Sure.
I mean, one word at a time games. That's not it. Yeah. No. But like ABC Tag Team, incredible game. But but they would be all physical. So they're doing hand shapes of the letters and turning it into pantomime, and just telling a story back and forth this way. Yeah. I mean, games like Changing Emotions were fantastic. Again, countdowns and replays. We would do conducted story was pretty great, but they had to really be looking at it. You have to have a different setup. We had to do like making entrances and exits. We had to make one particular place be the entrance, the place where all actors would enter and leave, because what we had to do was create a flawless focus. So we always knew how to throw focus and take focus. That was part of the deaf theater of the deaf technique, so that the deaf audience knows where to look. So the turn taking had to be incredibly clear. And if you were about to speak or sign speak, the actor had to, had to take the attention. The other actors had to give the focus. So it was a beautiful problem to solve. But some games don't work in that with that language and that culture. But others were incredible.
It sounds like they taught you a lot about improv when you were doing this in a different language.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. They did, and obviously, I mean, I got into deaf theater because I was always quite a physical actor. I liked physicalizing things, but I studied also a lot of commedia dell'arte, and everything is physicalized. Every thought is physicalized. In commedia, for example. So that's the same in deaf theater, I would say as well. If the audience didn't see it, it didn't happen.
Okay.
So if they're looking in the wrong person and the other person signed something,
right?
If the audience didn't see it, it did not happen.
Right. They missed it. It didn't happen.
Yeah. So this kind of attention to focus, physical focus was vital, and the stage picture work, because that's the thing about deaf is that they don't need a whole lot of props.
Yeah,
they just made it. They describe it. There's a visual vernacular, they call it the VV, visual vernacular, and this is how does a deaf person show the shape of the head, the ears, the whole. They would do this whole physical world and to define their physicality and then they would begin the language, the sign language of it. But yes, so they taught me an immense amount about physical comedy, physicalizing stories.
That's fascinating.
And really, really amazing.
Then how did you find your way to Berlin, Germany, starting a ComedySportz there?
Well, I was in Los Angeles, living in LA, teaching at California State University, Long Beach. I went to grad school there, and I was working there. And I met a woman, Patricia, who just look. I'm a small guy. I'm not a big tall man, but in walks. I met this giant woman, Patricia, very tall, very beautiful, German, and she was a fantastic yoga teacher. Just something about her was groundbreakingly cool about how she taught yoga. So we fell in love, actually, thanks to my ComedySportz friends from DC, who ended up moving out to LA. I was at a party. And David Schnepp, a player from Milwaukee, originally a Milwaukee player, he moved out to D.C. and played for me in D.C. And so shout out to David and to Brian Howard, another D.C. player. Well, we had all moved out to L.A. Long story short, I see Patricia for we meet third time by accident at this party. We fall in love. And I say, I'm bored with America. First of all, I was really bored with Los Angeles and America. I said, let's move to Berlin.
Wow.
Let's open up a yoga studio in Berlin. So it took us a little while to make it real. I got and then, well, I actually was working for Deaf West at the time on a show called Big River, which was the Broadway. So it turns out that we got to bring Big River, the musical, a theater of the deaf musical. Wow. And we got it to Broadway.
Oh my.
And this is in 2003. In 2003, we transferred this show from LA to Broadway. And I got to be assistant to the artistic director.
Wow.
And I got to see this show all the way from auditions to opening night.
Wow.
And the next day, I did the red carpet on Broadway, and the next day, I flew away to Berlin.
Oh my gosh!
That was the next day. Next day.
Wow.
So that was my last day as an American. I mean, I'm still an American, but the last days living in America was opening night on Broadway. And I like that story.
What year was that?
That was 2003 in July 23rd, I think.
To be precise.
Well, opening night on Broadway is pretty important.
For sure.
And,
so I can't believe you had an opening night on Broadway and then you left. You didn't want to stay in New York?
It was a lot of people ask me about that, but I always loved running theaters and loved running it. But there was something about yoga, especially yoga studio in Berlin. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm as a Jew, that was like the coolest idea ever. It's like, let's go to Berlin and look, I'm not so pompous to think that I can heal the world or heal the city, but there's some mission about that in that healing this divide, this story, being a part of the new way for Berlin yoga. And within a year, I started playing improv, doing improv. I was starting an improv company here. That was in 2005, and I've never stopped. So it's been 15 years in Berlin now of shows. And what's very cool is that because of that, Berlin has become one of the improv capitals of Europe.
Really?
And yes, for English improv. I mean, there's German improv as well, and it's been here forever. But we got got to plant the seed. I got to be I got to start that, and since then we've a bunch of the players, they developed on their own and started to work in long form improv and be very much influenced by the Upright Citizens Brigade and IO and the Herald. So there's a huge long form community here now in Berlin. There's the short form stuff that me and a couple other groups do. But because of a club that a couple former players opened, that we have the Comedy Cafe Berlin, a shout out to them. And they're wonderful. Noah and his brother Josh, their efforts to develop really great shows as well. And they have a training program. And so Berlin's become a real center for English speaking improv now.
So you don't speak in German. You said you do it in English.
Mostly our shows are in English. And this, yes. German isn't as playful as English. English is incredibly flexible. And I'm an English teacher as well. Of course, you have to, every expat who comes here and speaks English probably teaches English. So I did. And as much as I respect and love German, my German's not that great. Okay. Because I keep coming back to this English.
Right.
And because you can break it up, you can reorganize it, you can switch it around, and the meaning always comes out. It just does. And that's where German language doesn't. If you speak poor German, the meaning can fall apart.
Okay.
But English, somehow, it's why it's the international language. It breaks through it in meaning. Even if the syntax is broken up. Okay. And so that's why we do most of our shows in English. There is a German improv here, but that's really not my thing.
Now, how is it different? I can't even imagine. You said people in your troupe are from all over the world. How are you?
All over the world.
How is this different than performing in Madison or DC or LA or wherever?
Well, it's true. There's a lot of cultural references that we got to be careful about, taking suggestions that are uniquely American, that maybe the Portuguese players, like, I really don't know what that is, who this person is,
right,
or things like that. Getting a suggestion and like repeating it to the audience and saying, by the way, do you know what this word means?
Yeah.
Because if a player says, I don't know what that word is, then undoubtedly there's going to be audience members who also don't know.
Right.
So we do have to we have to be careful that we don't, we don't want our audience to feel like they're not getting the joke.
Right.
But because of the very physical form of short form improv, even if we're speaking too fast, we're getting the physical funny out. But I must say, obviously, there's always been that rule of you don't interrupt the other player.
Yeah.
But here, especially, we keep that rule alive, because if people are talking over each other, there's going to be a good chance that a non-native speaker is not can't discern both at once.
Sure.
Yeah. And so that can cause a lot of mess. So we do that a lot. I mean, pun games are really not that useful in this form because we don't want to, they don't get the pun. They don't get the double meaning.
Well, I would bet you're working with the deaf theater group would really help when you were talking about not talking over each other and talking about focus. You already had such an experience, and I'm sure you can teach that in a way that other people could not.
Very true. Yeah, there's been, I must say, it's been nice to get the insights of life and turn it into lessons for how do we make this a better show for different communities. Indeed, there's a bit, improv is huge in Europe. I mean, there's groups in Madrid, and I've got friends in Brussels who play it, Barcelona, Russia. There's a lot of Copenhagen has a fabulous improv scene, and a lot of it, is in English. I mean, I know a Spanish-speaking improv company here in Berlin. Wow. They do great work, but it's all in Spanish. So, improv is as we're noticing, becoming much more accepted. Yeah. As not just a comedy format, but also as soft skills for businesses and team development and things like this. Yeah. It's been nice to see. But I'll tell you, back in the 80s, when improv was just getting started and comedy was becoming a thing, we didn't know it was so groundbreaking. We just knew that we were connecting to it. But when I look back at it, I do recognize that it became, in terms of an entertainment form, this was and accepted as for comedians. I see this. I saw this a lot when in the trainings is that I didn't really want to train a lot of actors. Because trained actors are always trying to do it right. Okay. Doing it correctly. Yeah. I remember some of the most fabulous players were the construction workers, an interior designer. These are just incredibly funny people. Right. Who are just wonderful and charming and smart, but they're not necessarily theater folk. Right. And so, but it's a give and take, because then you have to teach them about stage picture and that kind of craft of storytelling and different way of. So, which one do is part of both? Right. Picking both styles of give and takes. Right. But everyone, the energy that I get out of teaching is just gigantic. I so enjoy teaching.
Now, how often do you make it back to the United States?
Well, I was coming back once every summer for the past 5 years, I'd say. I was coming. I have two children, 2 boys, And I wanted to show them America.
Okay.
So they've been coming, me and with my ex-wife.
Oh no, you and Patricia didn't stay together?
Oh yeah, that happened.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
Patricia and I had a great one. No, it's okay. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We opened up 3 fantastic yoga studios. We're still one of the biggest in Europe.
Okay.
Really, really, Spirit Yoga. A shout out to Patricia and Spirit Yoga. I mean, it's another part. It's a very life-defining choice for me.
Yeah.
Is to bring yoga in my life. But Patricia and I, we didn't survive as a couple, as a romantic couple. But we're fine. Now we went through a long battle of broken hearts, but that's okay. And so I used to go back to America, and Patricia would find her way. Maybe I'd meet her somewhere or meet the kids. We'd all get together. I'd hand off the kids to her. She'd give them back to me for a week here or there. So it worked. It worked. We would have done it this year as well, but this summer obviously is a very different scenario. But soon we'll be coming back. Okay. So, but I don't get back much.
No.
My brother and sister are still there.
Okay.
My brother's still in Madison, and my sister is in Omaha.
Okay.
So we just spoke right before I talked to you.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah.
Well, you have lived a fascinating life all over the place with all of your experiences with improv. I can't even imagine, I'm sure you can't either, what your life would have become if you didn't do improv. It's weaved into every aspect of your life.
It did. It got really into me. I mean, you come out of university and you're thinking to yourself, probably some do, I'm sure they're thinking, what the hell am I going to do?
Yeah.
Luckily for me, it was like, move to DC and start a comedy group there. Yeah. I mean, what? That was, what? And I think I was 23, maybe 23.
Yeah.
Is when I moved there. And I had something to do, immediately. So it definitely led the way. Yeah. I had other original ComedySportz players. They went all over America to start teams. Patrick Short going to Portland. Yep. James Bailey going to LA. There was David Miller who went to Chicago, started it up. I think it changed a little bit, and David Gadet, however you want to pronounce David's name.
Right.
They all took it up there, but we were all spreading all over the place like a germ. It really, that's how we looked at it. Like we were like the germs of comedy, and we wanted to just bring it to different areas. And then before we knew it, we had our first tournament, back in Milwaukee, and those were weird and fun. And we were like back, it's like, are we really? And then of course, then it all started, that whole thing of like, your city, show me a new game. Right. And then we would start to cross-pollinate and share games with each other that we would make up. And then the game list really exploded. Yeah. That must be just amazing, though, with you being very close to the very beginning in 85 and, collaborating with Milwaukee. And now look at you, you're in Germany, and I'm just fascinated by your experiences. I think it's fantastic. Oh, thank you. You should write a book. Yeah, it'll be I'll do an illustrated cartoon or something.
There you go.
I would. We're still growing and searching and making sense of all that we've been given. Yeah, you're right. I mean, all I mean is the story is still not done, and I think recently things have started to really come together again for me. After a long regenerating, but I never stopped doing the show. Oh, great. Never did. I had to drop the ComedySportz brand name a couple years ago, just because we weren't doing a clean show. Oh, and Berlin is not into wearing blue and red uniform. They're not into their striped uniforms. And Berlin is a much rougher feel of a town. Huh. And we're not really working towards a family show. Oh, okay. So under agreement, we just decided that we would stop. I would stop calling it ComedySportz, and now it's ComedyShorts.
Okay.
But it's basically some similarity. I mean, I'm still doing short form,
sure,
but we do it a bit differently here.
Okay.
And a bit rough and tumbler. It's a little bit, it's raw, and it's but it still keeps up a high focus, high energy.
Yeah.
And redefining and elements of long form are brought into it more because we do really love the long form techniques, and we're getting fed by a whole bunch of different influences that way.
Now,
Dick wrote the book.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to say, Dick showed us the way, so I still hold him in highest esteem.
What's your favorite game to play?
The games that scare me, I would say, are the greatest games, because I still like to feel that edge of how the hell are we going to pull this off?
Right.
Because there's some element of it, like just musical games. Sometimes those are challenges, obviously, to keep rapping games where you got to do. We don't do that much music here in Berlin right now because because paying for a keyboard player is very expensive.
Yeah.
Sadly. But games like really physical games, I still just eat up. I do love just being put into trouble, like Parallel Universe, where you're suddenly, freeze and now switch the story. You're in a totally different physical. You're back to that narrative. Who were you? Where were you?
Yeah.
And you got to quickly go, cohesively go, because there's nothing worse than just going brain dead moment. What's the story?
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible. And as you get older,
tell me. Yeah.
There are those moments where you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
But I'm still not the funniest up there, but I still do love a great story.
Yeah.
Crafting a great story. Yeah. That's still the funnest thing I know.
Well, it sounds like you're very inspired by a challenge. You're saying you like to play the games that are most challenging, and how are we going to get this to work? And I think that's fascinating.
I mean, not to say that I do always do a great job, but I want to be able to. Well, and I think it's also, maybe it's partly as the leader of the group, you also want to model that.
Yeah.
You have to. There's a certain that the bravery is like in stepping. Just going to the edge and jumping off, because if I don't do it, they won't do it. But there is a element of danger that I still want to find.
Well, and it's really how it seems you've lived your life. You've just gone from city to city and done new things and jumped in, and that's inspiring. That's very awesome.
Yeah, well, thanks. It's strange because I wouldn't have left Madison had it not been the fact that my dad died.
Right.
I didn't feel totally comfortable moving to Germany. There's no way I could have done that if my parents were alive. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Just as a Jewish man, I was really, really. It was a big question. Yeah. But of course, I needed to find out for myself. I needed to define it for myself. And that's also improv. That's from the improv, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You live it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to play a quick game here before we go. This has been awesome. I've loved meeting you and talking to you. This is fantastic.
Oh, nice to meet you too, dear. Nice to meet you.
We're going to play a Would You Rather game. I'm going to have you pick a number 1 through 3,000.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. And I'm going to give you a question then. You're going to have to answer.
1,888.
Oh, that's a tough one. Are you ready?
Really?
No, I don't know.
I don't know. What do you?
Here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you rather have pink eyes or purple eyebrows?
Wow. Pink eyes. It's not like pink eye, like the disease.
No, I think like instead of like blue eyes, green eyes, you'd have pink eyes or purple eyebrows.
I'd definitely go with the eyebrows.
Me too.
I'd go with the eyebrows.
Yes.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to creep out people with pink eyes. I think they would look at that. They'd be like, what the hell? But purple eyebrows give you expression and let you
it's a statement.
Kind of lead. And I like that idea.
Yeah, for sure. And they can see you coming. You know, you're right. That pink eye thing, they might not notice it at first. And then when they do notice it, oh my God.
They get spooked.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I'm feeling the purple eyebrows.
In Berlin, purple eyebrows aren't that weird.
Yeah.
This is a weird city. The things you see in this city.
Really?
So, oh my goodness. Oh man.
Oh boy. Give me one.
It's a great city.
Yeah.
It really is. But the multi-culti, we call it, the multicultural, this is such a melting pot of cultures and styles.
Yeah.
And you can see very, very, very basic bars that are just people throw wood crates together. And, you know, it's even bars where it's pay what you want. You know, there's not even a price list. It's like pay what you want, wine bars. Things like that, you know, people walking around with just the weirdest, wonderful costumes. And I got to say, it's a great city. You're welcome to come. I'll show you around.
I would love it. Actually,
and you can play. You can play my show.
Well,
you can play the show.
Kyle told me he performed in Germany, right?
What?
Is that not true? Is that not true? I thought he said that he met you in Germany and stayed with you and performed there. Am I making up stories? Here he comes.
Nick.
Oh, here he comes. Here he comes. He's going to clear it up.
So here, clear that up.
Yeah, Brian. So I played my second and third ever ComedySportz show.
Of course, I totally forgot that.
It was a few years back, but it was a treat. That's for sure.
Oh my God! Of course, Kyle. Yeah, Kyle. Oh my God. I mean, I haven't seen your face until just right before we got the interview, and that's like, oh yeah, brother, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, you want to get your butt back to Berlin? We're waiting for you.
Yeah, that would be lovely, and I'll get my butt back in the sound booth too.
Oh, all right. One other wonderful memory, of course, is when Dick came to town with Nick, his son Nick.
Oh, yes.
And they came in and Nick played. And of course, I mean, I saw Nick was the first ComedySportz baby.
Yeah.
And bless his soul. And
tragic
and Nick
loss.
played and Dick took notes. But I was so proud.
Yeah.
So unbelievably proud to show Dick the Berlin team. Because the only other time I remember him visiting was when I was in Washington, D.C., and he came to the Laughing Lizard Lounge. Okay. And that must have been, this was 1990 maybe. And so, it took us that long for Dick to come back. I mean, he's such a great man.
Yeah.
The world owes a lot to Dick and these first brave souls that
for sure
that decided to commit to this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hats off to all these great cities that have put up shows over the years. Some of the cities have come and gone.
Sure.
But and all the fantastic players that have put their hearts and souls into it. These great managers that stay with it because the money's definitely not the reason we're doing it.
Right.
But it sure is about the camaraderie and the idea of the fun art form that we get to do and the contribution. I meand interactive comedy. It's just so great, to think about. And it's still why I love short form. I still love to get the audience involved. Mm-hmm. That was a big big deal for me was always that. And that was really the heart of my comedy club in Washington, D.C., was this interactive entertainment form. And I really love that. I still believe in that interaction. It still makes really makes the world a better place that
Absolutely.
way.
Now, real fast before we go, I forgot to ask you, where did you get the nickname Kazoo?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, Kapell was my last name. Kazoo, geez, I think we were all just coming up with something that, the weird. And I love the fact that it's a funny sounding instrument and anybody can play it.
Yeah.
All you got to do is put it to your mouth and you make it. You can make sounds and it carries, and there's no other sound like it, but it's a kid toy. I think all of those things kind of made it go, that's me. Yeah, that's me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, if I ever make my way to Germany, my cousin actually lives there. I'm going to have to tell him to go see ComedySportz. But if I ever make my way there, we should dye our eyebrows purple together and give me a tour of the town.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you for your participation and spreading improv around the world. You're truly inspirational.
My pleasure. Really nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All the best. All the best. All the best. And let's just keep going. There's a lot more smiles to bring.
That's for sure. Especially now. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
The ComedySportz Podcast is produced and engineered by Kyle Hanneken. Our announcer is PJ Rockwell. Feel free to like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Comments and inquiries can be sent to the ComedySportz Podcast at gmail.com. Created and hosted by me, Christine Rollo Capriolo. Thanks for listening.
The ComedySportz Podcast is an independent production made by CSz players. The views and opinions expressed by the podcast host and any guests are their own and do not represent the views and opinions of any CSz location or CSz Worldwide. Vocabulary used by the host and guests is not necessarily representative of the CSz brand.